Claire met Edward, Claire was walking home from work on a rainy evening, clutching her umbrella to stay dry. To her surprise, a handsome man stepped out of his car and, joining her under the umbrella, asked if she could walk him to a nearby café. She hesitated, then nodded. When they arrived, he offered her a cup of coffee. Unsure whether to accept, she glanced at her phone and noticed her next bus wouldn't arrive for another 30 minutes. Reluctantly, she agreed to join him. The café's interior captivated her, warm, inviting, and beautifully designed. He opened the door for her, pulled out a chair, and invited her to sit. She smiled at the gentlemanly gesture. Before ordering, he asked what she would like. Feeling cold, she chose hot chocolate, and he decided to order the same. They chatted easily, the minutes slipping by unnoticed. When it was time to leave, he offered to drive her to her apartment. She gave him silent brownie points for his courtesy, but politely declined the ride. He persuaded her and assured that she would be safe. She chose the back seat instead of the front. He didn't question it, yet he couldn't resist stealing glances at her through the rearview mirror. The wind teased her hair, letting a few strands fall across her face, a sight he quietly admired. When they reached her apartment, he pulled over. Their eyes met in a silent exchange, a wordless agreement that this wouldn't be the last time they saw each other. As the wail of an ambulance cut through the air, Claire gently closed her eyes, her lips moving in a soft, silent prayer. Edward, curious, asked what she was doing. She smiled faintly and told him it was something her mother had taught her. Whenever an ambulance passed, she prayed for the stranger in distress, wishing them healing and hope. Without a word, Edward closed his eyes too, whispering his own prayer. In that simple, tender moment, he felt his heart swell. Her kindness had touched him deeper than she could ever know. Some stories never end. With the early morning light cascading through the stained glass windows of the quaint coffee shop, Claire ascended the narrow staircase, her footsteps echoing against the worn wooden treads. The scent of freshly ground beans and sweet pastries wafted up to greet her, mingling with the comforting aroma of brewing tea. Each step she took brought her closer to a world of warmth and solace, a stark contrast to the cold, drizzling city street she had just left behind. Her backpack, a trusty companion filled with the tools of her trade, was slung over one shoulder, its weight a constant reminder of the responsibilities she carried with her. The soft buzz of conversation and the clinking of porcelain grew louder as she reached the top, hinting at the sanctuary of camaraderie and creativity that awaited her in the cozy loft above. The anticipation grew as she pushed open the door, ready to face the canvas of the day with the brush of a pen and the palette of her thoughts, eager to capture the vibrant hues of life in the quiet cocoon of her favorite haunt. Though she bumped into a waiter, balancing a tray of steaming drinks and delicate muffins, Claire offered an apologetic smile, which he returned with a knowing nod that seemed to acknowledge the creative preoccupation that often accompanied patrons of the artsy nook. She continued onward, her mind already racing with the narratives and scenes she sought to capture in her sketchbook. Each corner of the coffee shop, with its eclectic mix of antique furniture and modern art, whispered its own story, waiting for someone like her to give it voice. The deep velvet couches beckoned her with their plush embrace, while the rustic wooden tables whispered promises of a productive day's work. The loft, a symphony of warm light and soft shadows, was where she had spent countless hours bringing her thoughts to life. The occasional ponderous gaze out of the rain-speckled windows had often led to the most profound moments of insight. Today, as the droplets danced a rhythmic ballet on the glass, she knew she had found the perfect setting for her latest masterpiece. With a sense of purpose, she navigated through the maze of chattering regulars and laptop-wielding freelancers, her eyes searching for the most solitary and inspiring spot to set up camp. It was her favorite place to spend time with her beloved Edward, whose presence had become as much a part of her morning routine as the bitter sweetness of her black coffee. As she pulled out a chair to sit, the screech of its legs against the hardwood floor pierced the ambient chatter, causing every set of eyes in the cafe to turn her way. She was not used to such attention, usually preferring to blend into the scenery like a well-placed brushstroke in one of her artworks. But Edward, ever the charmer, had a way of making her feel seen and loved even in the most crowded of spaces. A warm flush crept up her neck as she met the curious gazes of the patrons, but she knew they bore no malice, only a fleeting curiosity at the disturbance in their usual morning rituals. He stepped up behind her, his strong hand gently guiding her to the chair he had positioned in their customary spot, the one with the best view of the rain-kissed street below. As she sank into the embrace of the plush velvet, Edward leaned down to whisper in her ear, "Let's paint today's masterpiece together," his breath tickling her skin. The shrieking noise of the chair was a small price to pay for the warmth of his company, and she felt her shoulders relax, ready to let the day unfold with their shared creative spirit. Claire settled into the chair, the plush cushions enveloping her in their embrace as she placed her backpack on the table with a soft thud. The melodious strains of a romantic tune played in the background, the gentle strums of a guitar accompanying the pitter-patter of the rain outside. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room, illuminating the warm tones of the antique furniture and adding a touch of elegance to the bohemian setting. The waiter, a young man with a charming smile, arrived at their table, a menu card in hand. She took it with a nod of thanks, her eyes scanning the familiar offerings, but her thoughts remained entangled in the vibrant web of her imagination. A young boy seated across from her caught her attention as he giggled, a spoonful of rainbow-colored ice cream poised before his mouth, the vivid colors standing out like a painting against the monochrome backdrop of the rainy day. Her taste buds awoke from their slumber, craving the sweet, refreshing kiss of something cold, to be continued. Some stories never end. With a knowing smile, Claire nodded at the waiter, confirming her usual order with a silent understanding that had grown between them over the months she had frequented this place. As he turned away to attend to the bustling kitchen, she watched the life outside the window, her heart fluttering with a soft melancholy that often accompanied the sight of rain. The world outside was a canvas of moving colors and shapes, each person and object a stroke of fate's brush. The children's laughter as they jumped into puddles, the lovers' embrace tightening with every splash, and the determined stride of those who refused to let the weather dampen their spirits. All of it was a poignant reminder of the fleeting beauty of everyday moments. The rain. It's like nature's way of reminding us to slow down, to appreciate the simple things. As the waiter returned with her drinks, setting the royal falooda before her with a flourish, she took a deep breath, allowing the cold sweetness to wash over her senses as she prepared to translate the symphony of the rain-soaked world into the silent language of art. The rich flavors of the rose-colored dessert mingled with the scents of the coffee shop, creating a symphony of flavor that mirrored the tapestry of human experience unfolding outside. As she savored the delightful fusion of flavors in the royal falooda, Claire couldn't help but gaze at the cafe's message board, a kaleidoscope of paper hearts and scribbled notes that had become a hallmark of the coffee shop's charm. It was a peculiar tradition that had blossomed here, one that had captured the essence of the romantic spirit that seemed to saturate the very air of the place, especially on the eve of Valentine's Day. The board was a living testament to love and longing, a place where whispers of affection became tangible art, and where the hopeful eyes of lovers searched for the secret messages that held the promise of surprise and joy. Amidst the whirlwind of teenagers eagerly scanning the board for their names or the hint of a secret admirer's intentions, Claire felt a gentle tug at her heartstrings. Her thoughts drifted to the love notes she and Edward had exchanged in the early days of their courtship, the thrill of finding a carefully crafted message waiting for her amidst the jumble of paper confetti. As she watched the young couples, she couldn't help but smile at the earnestness of their searches, the way their faces lit up with each discovery. It was a simple yet profound act, a declaration of affection that transcended the boundaries of time and space, connecting hearts through the silent language of written words. With each spoonful, she found herself becoming more attuned to the symphony of love that played out before her eyes. Claire's hand hovered over the empty chair, the spoonful of royal falooda trembling as she realized Edward's absence was not just a figment of her imagination, but a stark reality. The warmth of his whisper, the gentle pressure of his hand, it had all been a bittersweet mirage conjured by her yearning heart. Her eyes filled with tears that mirrored the rain outside, blurring the colorful scene before her. The realization hit her like a gust of cold wind, stealing her breath and leaving her trembling in the cozy embrace of the café. The bracelet on her wrist, a delicate reminder of a love once bright, now felt like a shackle, a poignant symbol of the love that had slipped through her fingers. Her heart ached as the memories flooded back, the bouquet that had once adorned her favorite spot, the boxes of chocolates that had held sweet nothings scribbled on their lids, the candle-lit dinners that had flickered with hope and passion. The chair remained vacant, a silent witness to her shattered illusion, and the only sound that filled the space between them was the mournful weeping of the rain. The cold, hard truth washed over her, a harsh counterpoint to the warm sweetness of the dessert she had hoped to share. Her breath hitched in her chest and she let out a silent sob, the weight of her solitude heavy as the rain that beat against the windows. Placing her trembling hand against the cool pane of the window, Claire felt the delicate touch of invisible fingers intertwine with her own, a phantom embrace that sent shivers down her spine. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to believe that Edward's spirit had reached out to her, bridging the chasm of reality and memory. But as the mirage dissipated, she realized it was merely her own hand, her palm pressed against the glass to combat the loneliness that had seeped into her soul. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the street outside, followed by the thunderous roar of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the café. The startled cries of the patrons echoed through the room, a cacophony that pierced the silence of her solitary heartache. Yet amidst the chaos of the storm's intrusion, she felt an odd sense of solace, as if the tempest outside mirrored the tumultuous landscape within her. The rain continued to fall, a blur of silver streaks against the darkened sky, a stark contrast to the fiery ache that consumed her. The thunder was but a whisper compared to the volcanic eruption that raged in her chest, a silent scream of pain and longing that threatened to engulf her whole. Despite the commotion around her, she remained still, her eyes fixed on the spot where Edward's chair should have been. The weight of his absence, a palpable presence that anchored her to the earth, a reminder that she was not alone in her grief, even if her heart felt as empty as the chair before her. The memory of that fateful evening played out in her mind's eye, a stark contrast to the serene scene before her. It was here, in this very loft, amidst the aromatic embrace of coffee and the gentle hum of rain, that she had once rejected Edward's proposal. She had been overwhelmed, the weight of his friends' expectant gazes too much to bear. But Edward, ever the persistent romantic, had not allowed that to be the end. He had found solace in their frequent squabbles, for even in their discord, she could not help but give him her full attention. And it was during one such heated argument that he had pulled out his guitar, his calloused fingers coaxing a melody from the strings that resonated deep within her soul. The raw emotion in his voice had pierced the armor she had built around her heart, and she had found herself unable to resist the siren's call of his love. The anger had melted away, revealing the tender buds of affection that had been hiding beneath the thorns of doubt and fear. With each strum, the petals of love had unfurled, and she had felt herself drawn to him, unable to ignore the symphony that played between their hearts. It was a song she had never wanted to end, and in that moment, as the last notes reverberated through the cafe, she had realized that love was not about grand gestures, but the quiet moments of understanding and connection that they shared in this very spot. Despite the ache that filled her now, she knew that the love they had built here was as real as the rain that painted the streets outside, and as enduring as the timeless art that adorned the walls of this sanctuary. Fate, it seemed, had drawn them in different directions, like leaves on the whim of the wind. Claire had become lost in the hustle of her burgeoning career, her days a blur of deadlines and late-night meetings. Edward, on the other hand, had been swept away by the siren call of adventure, his heart leading him to distant cities where the pulse of life beat to a different rhythm. Their love, once as vibrant as the colors of a rainbow, had faded into the monochrome of memory, a love story told in whispers of regret and longing. For months, their only connections had been the invisible threads of love that stretched taut across the miles, the echoes of a bond that refused to be broken despite the tyranny of time and distance. And then, one fateful day, as Claire sat in her quiet office, her eyes glazed over with the weight of unshed tears, her phone buzzed to life in her pocket. She glanced down to see an unknown number flashing on the screen. The message was simple, yet it sent a shiver down her spine. "Hi, remember me?" Her heart skipped a beat, a wild hope flaring within her chest like a spark in a darkened room. She stared at the screen, her mind racing with the possibilities, her fingers hovering over the keys. And then, as if the universe had heard her silent prayer, another message arrived. "I am Eddie." The world around her faded to nothingness as she read his name, the letters etched into her soul as if by a hot iron. She could hardly believe her eyes. Was it truly him reaching out to her after so much time had passed? Some stories never end. Part 4. Her trembling hands dialed the number, her heart pounding in anticipation of his voice, a melody she had not heard in what felt like an eternity. Yet when he spoke, the excitement she had hoped to hear was muted, as if he too were wary of the waters they now had to navigate. The conversation was brief, the awkwardness of their separation thickening the air between them. He suggested they meet at their old haunt, the café where they had shared so many moments of joy and sorrow. Without hesitation, she agreed, eager to see the face that had haunted her dreams and to rekindle the flame that had once burned so brightly. As she hung up the phone, she felt a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. The thought of seeing him again was both exhilarating and daunting. But she knew she had to go, for in the tapestry of life, some threads are meant to be woven together again, no matter how far apart they have been pulled. She had practiced her lines, her greetings, her smiles, each rehearsal a silent sonnet in her mind. But as Edward approached, all words fled from her lips like shadows before the dawn. It was a peculiar sensation for Claire, who was known for her ability to converse endlessly, to find herself at a loss for speech in the face of her former love. Yet she managed a soft hello, her voice a mere whisper that seemed to dissipate in the warm, moist air of the café. He looked at her, his eyes a tempest of emotion, and she felt a pang of regret for the lost moments they had shared, moments that now existed only as faded watercolor memories in the annals of her heart. Claire's heart fluttered. She had dreamt of this moment, of their reunion 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality that now stood before her. She took a deep, unsteady breath as he approached, his gait as confident and sure as the beat of a metronome that had kept time to the symphony of their past. The card in his hand remained a mystery, a silent question mark that held the power to shatter or uplift her world. Her palms grew clammy as she clutched the wedding card, the weight of its reality sinking in like a lead balloon. The name Emily swam before her eyes, a stark reminder that the love story she had been crafting in her heart was no longer her own. The air in the café grew thick with unspoken words and the bitter scent of regret. The rain outside had intensified, casting a melancholic pall over the once lively street, reflecting the tumult within her chest. She stared at the card, her mind racing with 1,000 questions, yet she remained silent, her voice a trapped bird in a cage of shock and pain. Edward's eyes searched hers, a silent apology etched into every line on his face. He took a deep breath and spoke, his voice a gentle whisper amidst the symphony of the storm. "I never meant for it to be like this, Claire. I never wanted to hurt you. But when I met Emily, it was as if a piece of me that I didn't know was missing had finally been found." Each word felt like a dagger, piercing the illusion she had clung to with desperate hope. She had imagined 1,000 scenarios, but never this, never the love of her life confessing his love for another. The rain outside seemed to weep for her, its rhythm syncing with the painful throb of her heart. Some stories never end. Part 5. It was a Herculean task for a simple-hearted girl like Claire to hide the storm brewing within her as Edward's revelation crashed over her like a tidal wave. The smile she forced upon her trembling lips was a fragile mask, a delicate veneer that threatened to shatter with every beat of her shattered heart. Somehow she managed to stand, her legs wobbling like a newborn fawn's. The cold droplets kissed her cheeks, mingling with the hot tears that she had so valiantly tried to hold at bay. She allowed the storm to envelop her, her sobs lost in the cacophony of the city's weeping skies. Each step she took away from the café was a silent admission that the love story she had so cherished was now nothing but a page torn from her heart, fluttering away in the wind like the leaves of a forgotten autumn. The rain was a cruel mimic, mirroring the torrent of her emotions as she wept bitterly, the cold drops a stark contrast to the fiery ache that burned within her. But amidst the tempest of her pain, she found a strange comfort in the anonymity of the downpour. The rain a silent witness to the shattered dreams that had been laid to rest in the quiet corner of her favorite coffee shop. Back at her apartment, Claire sank into the familiar embrace of her armchair, the cushions molding to the shape of her sorrow-laden body. She pulled out her phone, the digital conduit to Edward's past affections, and scrolled through the messages they had exchanged before the chasm of time and distance had swallowed them whole. Each word was a poignant reminder of the love they had once shared, the warmth of his voice echoing through the cold, silent air of her living room. His explanations, his attempts to justify his actions, swirled in her mind like the leaves in the storm outside. The accusations he had painted her with were a mere smokescreen, a desperate bid to shield himself from the truth of his own fears and doubts. But as she stared at the screen, her eyes fell upon the image that had brought the walls of her delicate fortress tumbling down. His new girlfriend's smiling face, now immortalized as his profile picture. The love she had nurtured for so long was no match for the cold, hard reality that stared back at her. The warm, fuzzy feelings she had cherished were doused in an icy wave of clarity, leaving her drained of the very essence that had once defined her. The girl in the photo was a complete stranger, yet her image was now inextricably linked to the man who had once promised to love her forever. The rage that had once fueled her was replaced by a profound sadness, a heavy weight that pressed down on her chest like an unbearable burden. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within, the relentless rain a cruel echo of the tears that streamed down her face, blurring the line between the world beyond her window and the shattered landscape of her heart. She knew she had to let go, to release the last vestiges of hope that clung to her like a stubborn ivy on a crumbling wall. But as she wiped her eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath, she realized that the love she had felt for Edward was not so easily forgotten. It lingered like the scent of rain on a petal, a lingering reminder of the beauty that once was. And though she was now adrift in a sea of doubt and pain, she knew that she would weather this storm, as she had weathered so many before. The waiter approached with the bill, placing it gently on the table. The sound of his footsteps was like a solemn drum roll in the quiet café, a stark reminder that the interlude of their shared past had come to an end. Claire reached into her bag, her trembling hand retrieving a crumpled wad of bills. She placed the cash on the table. As she stood to leave, she cast one last glance at the empty chair that had held her hope, now a silent sentinel of love lost. She took a deep, shuddering breath and turned towards the message board, her steps slow and deliberate. Her hand trembled as she took a pen, the ink a stark contrast against the white paper hearts that surrounded it. With a shaky script, she wrote her final message. "Wish you a happy married life," and added, "With love and prayers, Claire." It was a silent goodbye, an offering of peace.
Some stories never end. Part 6. She took a deep, shuddering breath and whispered, "Thank you, Edward," to the ghost of a love that had once been so vibrant and alive. And with that, she turned the page of her book, ready to begin anew, the rain outside a gentle reminder that even in the aftermath of a storm, there was always room for the blossom of a second chance. She got out of the shop and walked into the rain. She was drenched, but it didn't stop her. Suddenly, a stranger appeared beside her, holding an umbrella, and began walking with her. She didn't bother to look at his face. They walked in silence for a long time. She just wanted to see if he would leave her when he reaches his destination. But soon, she realized, he had come for her. She finally dared to look at his face, as if peeling herself away from the weight of the past. He didn't ask anything, and she didn't need to say a word. When they reached her place, she silently pointed toward her house. He gave a small nod, and they walked toward it together. The rain had softened into a mist, the kind that clings gently rather than soaks. Their footsteps were slow, unhurried, as if neither of them wanted the moment to end too soon. At the gate, she paused. He stopped beside her, still holding the umbrella over both their heads. She turned to him for the first time, properly searching his face, not for answers, but for something more subtle. All of a sudden, a sweet breeze blew, carrying the scent of wet earth and something else, something like hope. Above them, the clouds began to part, and a soft light broke through. A rainbow appeared across the sky, delicate yet vivid, arching like a promise. Both of them looked up, and for the first time, they smiled. Some stories never end, just take your turn.